Happy Thursday. Today is Thursday, November the 5th, 2020, and today's daily Bible readings come to us from Psalm 78, 1 through 7, Joshua 5, 10 through 12, Revelation 8, 6 through chapter 9, verse 12. Or you could have read Psalm 70 and then Amos 1, 1 through chapter 2, verse 5, and then again end up with Revelation 8. And today I'm going to look at Amos because the DBR, the lectionary, is going to be following through Amos for the next several days. As a matter of fact, it's one of the main texts for Sunday. So if you go to church this Sunday and your preacher happens to be preaching from the Revised Common Lectionary and they hit up the text from Amos, you're kind of prepared because you're going to get a nice little introduction today. And I want to apologize to you first off because there will be math involved in today's DBR, but it's very simple math. So 3 plus 4 equals 7. And that's the DBR for today. No, I'm just kidding. We have this formula that keeps getting repeated over and over again here in the first chapter of Amos. Actually, the first two chapters of Amos, where he keeps saying for 3 transgressions and for 4. And he starts off with all the countries that are around the countries of Judah and Israel. And he starts kind of like in a circle, just kind of spiraling down because he's eventually going to get to his point. But he's listing out, he says, for 3 transgressions and for 4. And now this is God speaking through the prophet Amos, just to remember that. So 3 plus 4, of course, equals 7. Why is that important? Well, it's a formula for perfection, except in this case, it's not a good thing. It's not like the perfection that like we want to achieve as Christians, where we grow more and more Christ-like every day and more alive in God's love in our hearts. No, this is not a good perfection. What this means is that all of these kingdoms have reached the perfection of their sins. And that's why he keeps saying for 3 transgressions and for 4. In other words, they've done such a good job at being bad that I've just had it. So they reached the perfections of their sin, and now God is going to act. And their sins are all of a kind, really. They were all abusive to their neighbors in just pursuit of selfish gain. They took their advantage of their neighbors and abused them. And interestingly, it's kind of like they're all taking advantage of each other, and they're just treating each other like garbage because they all wanted to have what the other neighbors had. They wanted to get above them. And so they just kind of didn't really care about anything but themselves, and they took advantage of everybody they could in order to get what they wanted. It's interesting because it's not for something that you might expect God to be mad at them for, like their idolatry. But, in reality, idolatry is just an outgrowth of our own selfish, self-centered, sinful nature anyway. I've talked about that before. I'm sure I'll talk about it again. Going to lay off that for today. But anyway, and it's the interesting thing is like we get to the point now at the end of today's reading where it talks about Judah, and he says for 3 sins and for 4 of Judah. So Judah is perfect in their sin too. But here's the difference with Judah and the nations around them. He points out that they had the benefit of God's law. They had the benefit of God's word. But it's actually worse because they were God's chosen people. He gave them his word and his commandments, and they rejected it. And so they have become just like the other nations that Amos has been targeting, that God has been saying he is going to judge. So they're just like their neighbors now. They're just as selfish. They're just as idolatrous. They're just like the same sinful nations that live around them, which is probably interesting because as Amos is reading this off to his audience, they're probably thinking, yeah, those nations stink. They're not like us. They're not God's chosen people. Wait, he's coming after Judah? So, but here's the thing. Amos isn't really focusing on them. His target is not really the other nations. It's not really Judah. It's kind of just wait till you hear about Israel. And that's the audience that he's directing this to. Because if you look at the first couple of verses, it says, the word of Amos, who was among the shepherds of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of King Uzziah of Judah, and in the days of King Jeroboam son of Joash of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. And he said, the Lord roars from Zion and utters his voice from Jerusalem. The pastures of the shepherds wither up, and the top of Carmel dries up. So go through and read the book of Amos. It won't take you very long. It's not a huge book, but pay attention because um, he's getting ready to drop the bomb on Israel. So anyway, that's the DBR for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Get out, have a good day, enjoy the day, and Stuart Huggins will be back tomorrow for another Friday DBR. We'll see you later. Boop.